Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Pathways to Excellence. We are most honored to have with us here today Miss Emma Davidson, the head of sixth form at the KTJ, the Kolej Tuanku Jaafar. Some of you may know that as one of Malaysia's most prestigious sixth form boarding schools. And also, Miss Davidson is the past president, if I'm not wrong. Past president, right? Not like current
Correct,
president, future
correct.
president.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Past president of the Oxford and Cambridge Society Malaysia. Miss Davidson, thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great. I was super excited to hear about all your podcasts and yeah, very happy to be here.
Wow. Thank you so much, Emma. Emma, I first wanted to thank you as well for the service that essentially you've done for so many generations of excellent Malaysian students. You have essentially students go on from Kolej Tuanku Jaafar over to Oxford to Cambridge. Your preparatory program has reached even my ears with your interviews, workshops, and various other things of that nature. And yeah, like you even have like some people in the US at Harvard, like for example, Jatin and also Hamdi as well. And to kind of start us off, Emma, how do you feel about, well, your role as an educator?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to look at the sort of the big success students and those big stories, but you know, when a student sets themselves a target to get into a university, whatever that university is, if it's their target, and they get in, that's superb. And the joy from someone getting into their target university is the same, no matter what that university is. So everybody focuses on those top ends, but actually it's students meeting their goals, getting to where they really want to go, getting the grades that they want, turning into the people that they're really proud of. There's just as much joy from all of those. I was talking earlier to somebody about two boys who I was really skeptical about whether they would be a good fit for KTG's sixth form. And I know their sisters well, who are older, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. And the two of them have just done so well. And it's just so brilliant to see that actually whatever universities they go to. So those kind of incremental things of people improving from wherever they started and wherever they end up. It's about a journey of improvement and getting to where you want to be.
Wow, a journey, huh? And I imagine that you've been very deeply involved in a lot of these journeys as well, in your capacity, I guess, of head of sixth form for KDJ. Well, how has that experience been for you so far? Well, essentially running, well, administrating or facilitating the experience of such, well, distinguished students who are constantly around you and, well,
Yeah.
enjoying this environment as well. I see, by the way, that you
Yeah.
have a very cozy looking office right there. I'm sure that there are many memories that come
Yeah.
along with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just I was thinking the other day actually, I was looking at one of our students who's beavering away. I think one of the things I love about this job is that there are some incredible students, and when you admire and respect your students because they're incredible people, I think that's a lovely thing to work with such amazing students in lots and lots of different ways. But
Mm,
guys, this is a really important time in their lives. I mean, it is a journey, right? We're just getting them on to the next step. But it's for us, it's a huge emotional roller coaster because we're with them, particularly as a boarding school. You bond with the students. You've invested so much more with them, as boarding students. Um, and then, Oxbridge time. This year we got 7 into Oxbridge, which was better than any other school in Malaysia. And yet, you can be sitting there and they're jumping up and down, they're screaming with joy, they've got in, they've got in. But then the next minute there's someone that didn't get in and they're sat in their office and they're sat in your office, they're crying. And so not everybody gets into these universities. And as happy as you are for those that get in, there's also those that didn't. And you also feel it for those. And um, sometimes I think for them they're just one person that didn't get in. For us, it's like repeated, like little stabs of when somebody didn't get in, and you really want them to get in. So they invest obviously a huge amount in applications, and their parents do, but we also do as well. So yes, we love certain aspects of it, but it is also brutal because when people don't get offers
Mm,
when they want to, it's just as upsetting. Yesterday, there was a boy who got off the pen wait list.
mm.
So that was just such a huge moment of excitement and joy with this student yesterday. So there are moments like that that are just wonderful and beautiful, and we're so lucky to be part of that kind of joy and excitement. And it tempers the moments when people are crying because they didn't get the offers that they wanted.
Oh, it definitely is very touching, and I can feel the depth of your feeling as well. And I'd also like to extend personal congratulations to the student who got off the pen wait list. Congratulations, and may a new future await you in ways that you may not have anticipated.
Yeah.
Rejection is redirection, but sometimes or another, the path of the universe conspires to bring us onwards towards our highest aspirations. Thank
Good,
you so
good.
much, Emma. Now, if we could then delve a little back in time to the early journey of Miss Emma Davidson, then. Emma, you went through this process yourself, did you not? When you eventually went from where you were in the UK, skipping over the whole education background part, you're currently in Malaysia. But from what I know, there was a time when you were a student back in Bradford Grammar School, and you eventually went off to Oxford University to study the PPE, the Politics, Philosophy, and Economics program at Oxford. Would you recount for me for a minute what those early days for you were like in the UK and how education and those conscious decisions shaped your pathway along the way?
Mm. Um, so the Oxford idea was one that was a bit of a surprise. So I did my O levels, our GCSE equivalent, at a pretty rough school. There's actually a film made about the school. It was so rough. And so I couldn't do the A levels I wanted. So my parents, through some rinky-dink funding of using my inheritance and remortgaging the house, sent me to a boys' grammar school that had just started accepting girls that was very good for Oxbridge. So I rocked up from this very rough school at
Mhm.
this private, predominantly boys' school. There's 12 girls in the sixth form. And when they were doing the list of who wants to visit Oxford and Cambridge, I didn't put my name down. And the teacher said, "Why is your name not down?" And I'm like, "Well, why would I put my name down for that trip?" And they were like, "Well, you're one of our strongest candidates this year. You need to put your name down." So it was a real, oh, okay. And then, of course, they make you apply and then they help you and then you get in.
Wow.
Um, but if I hadn't have been at that school, that just never ever would have happened. So it was a bit of a whirlwind surprise to get there.
Mm.
And in that sense, there hadn't been that sort of pedigree of expectations and what's going to happen when you're there. So it was a bit of a culture shock. I have to admit, it was definitely a culture shock. I sympathize with our students when they're going off there, to be in an environment where there's a lot of people who are very confident because they've always thought that they're going to be going there and
Mm.
very self-assured. So, that's something we do try to prepare our students for when they go, that it is going to be a cultural shock. Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine, yes. Well, if I could ask, may I ask what led you to go from the whole, oh, do I have to apply, over to, okay, let's go and study politics, philosophy, and economics? Because, like, I mean, you do have to kind of make a conscious choice, right? Of, well, if not the university, of course, there could be that aspect of coercion being all like, Emma, you better apply right there. But then, like, of course, the subject choice might be a separate matter, I guess. Would you share maybe like what led you to choose that discipline?
Yeah, so
Mm.
PPE was pretty obvious one in a way because I was very good at economics. My maths is shocking, so it's a bit of a surprise now that I was, but I was very good at economics, and I was really interested in politics.
Mm.
So my nickname used to be my maiden name was Friday, so Emma EP, initials are EP, and then my nickname used to be EPPM, as in Prime Minister, because I was so interested in politics. So PPE actually was quite a good fit. I didn't like the philosophy. I had a bit of a stab at it, but I immediately dropped it after the first year because I did not really like the philosophy part. So it was
Ah, I see.
the choice, of course, was a kind of a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of applying, you just kind of, if you're going to go to a school like the one I went to, or a school like KGJ,
Mm-hmm.
um, listen to the advice that you're being given, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the value of going. So what was the point of
Mm-hmm.
my parents sending me, paying this huge amount of money for my family to go to this school, if they were going to give advice and then we were just going to ignore it? So,
Mm-hmm.
if someone's raising your aspirations, you should go with it, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
say, no, no, I want to go back in my box now. So
Mm-hmm.
once someone had suggested it, you just kind of go along with it because you think,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, I trust you. You're the experts in this field. If you say I can do that, then I can do it.
Mm, wonderful. Okay. And so when we think about the Pandora's box that had opened when you had gone on to Oxford, then, I mean, do you feel that there are some things in your life that had transpired that might not have transpired if there were an alternate reality where Emma Davidson had gone somewhere else?
Oh, yeah, completely. I often think this. I completely think this. So, um, so I always wanted to work in insurance.
Hmm.
Bizarre. And I remember the Oxford careers people, it's because my dad was insurance and I wanted to be an insurance broker. And the Oxford careers people rightly pointed out, they said nobody from Oxbridge applies for insurance. So you're really going to stand out. They're going to interview you as for a graduate job just out of curiosity because everybody else is going into law and banking and consultancy and things like that. So I did get a job, my dream company, so I was very happy. And then I met, when I went for my second round interview, I met a Malaysian man who was on the graduate scheme already, and then he became my husband, and then we moved to Malaysia. So if I could have done
Oh,
that, I wouldn't be here. Yeah.
wow. Okay, that's fascinating. I mean, but certainly there are some very interesting individuals. I mean, like at Oxford, well, your husband, yourself, of course. And of course, I'm not sure, Emma, if you've seen this article right over here. Yeah, I'm gonna share it on the screen right about now. PPE, the Oxford
Uh,
degree that runs Britain, right here. So
yeah.
essentially, yeah, as you can see right here, the introduction goes, yeah, at
Ed
Oxford University.
Miliband. Yeah.
Yeah, Ed Miliband launched the Labour Party's general election manifesto. It was examined
Yeah.
by the BBC's political editor, Oxford PPE graduate Nick Robinson, Robert Peston, Paul Johnson, David Cameron, and then Ed Balls. And yes, the list goes on, and not simply, well, within the UK itself, but also you have Mr. Khairy Jamaluddin, who will appear on this podcast
Mhm.
incidentally as well, and also Mr. Tony Pua.
Yep.
Along the way. And then, of course, there is, I'm not sure if you've met Mr. Ming Teen before.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
have.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Ah,
Yep.
yes, okay. Mr. Ming Teen of Ming's Watches.
So,
Uh,
oh no, I
yeah.
haven't met him. No, no. So, yes, I was at Corpus Christi with Ed Miliband. So he was
Ah,
like ACR president. Yeah, so knew him quite well in the day. We were the sporty group, and he was kind of the intellectual labor group. So we were a bit. They were very sort of chippy, angry-ish people. He was actually quite nice, but some of the people in his group were a bit chippy. So yeah, you could actually say that PPE ruins Britain rather than runs Britain. I was thinking. I mean, I think Liz Truss also did PPE. I mean, it's not such an illustrious group in a way when you consider some of the things they've done.
I see. Wow. When you say ruins Britain, I mean, like, of course, the word ruin, like any other word, has many different potential meanings depending on what the person happens to be thinking of at that point in time and their social context. But when you think of ruin in this particular context, do you feel that there is a sort of causal relationship that had to do with the education that you had received? Or do you feel that it is merely correlative with the choice that a person might have to undertake the PPE?
Yeah, I think it's more that it is a general degree and it's a great way. of getting people to think about problems. So,
Mm-hmm.
a really good example of that is when Khairy was appointed head of rolling out the vaccines program.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of people said, he did PPE. How is he qualified to roll out the vaccines? Well, because he's been taught to think in a certain way. I mean, and to consider lots of different things, different angles, and to
Mm-hmm.
analyze things, evaluate things well. So, and to listen to experts as well to some extent. So, that's one of the reasons why I think, he did do a fantastic job on that, and you could see that. So it does have some values. I think in the UK, one of the problems is that there is a certain group of leaders that just empower and just bubble to the top, particularly the Conservative Party. And then you end up with a lack of depth and breadth of
Mm-hmm.
experience running the government. And I think that's one of the problems they've had in the UK. And of course, it's getting closer and closer, right? They went back down that Eton route as well. Even Ed Balls did PPE. Ed Balls was in the Labour Party as well.
Mm-hmm.
Chancellor, Shadow Chancellor of the Labour Party for many years. So, yeah, I think it's just because it becomes quite a little old boys club, but there are some girls in there now. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
good to have a broader range of people who are running the government.
Ah, I see. Okay.
We shouldn't blame the PPE course
Mm-hmm.
altogether.
I see. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Well, thank you so much. Well, all right. So maybe if I could then ask, well, well, I mean like I had meant to ask this earlier, but well, why insurance of all things?
No, no, I can't remember. But I'm very passionate about it. I mean, my dad was in insurance. But yeah, it's a bizarre thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
did work in insurance and I absolutely loved it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I see. Wow.
I can't remember why.
That's all right. That's all right. Could you maybe tell me a little bit about what it was like for you to move from the UK over to Malaysia? Because like usually people make the opposite move. Like there's this like push maybe for people to go from essentially Malaysia over to somewhere else right there. So in that sense, often within Malaysian society, there's this element of what we call brain drain. But on the other hand, so like we managed to somehow create for a brief and liminal moment a brain magnet that pulled Emma Davidson over. So like how was that and like what was that experience like for you?
Well, it was a husband magnet because he was Malaysian and he was offered a job back here. So we moved back here. And so I'm quite lucky. My husband is his mother is Malay from Kedah
Oh,
and
yes.
his father is British. So
Ah.
he's half. And he grew up, half his life was in Britain at boarding school and university. So in that sense, they were quite an easy family to go into. My in-laws, I absolutely adore them. They're lovely, very welcoming, lovely, lovely people. So it was quite an easy family. Lots of international cousins, quite an easy family to move into. I had a great job. I worked as a loss adjuster to start with. My boss was brilliant. Very, very westernized. He had a British wife. He'd gone to university in Nottingham, worked in the UK. So it wasn't a massive cultural shock.
Mm,
I had all these sort of people around me.
I
But yeah,
see.
it was easy. You know what? It's funny. I mean, people like to gripe about Malaysia, but in the expats, it's really, really rare to meet an expat who does not want to stay in Malaysia. I mean,
Ah. Uh-huh.
it's a wonderful country, and it's really unusual if you find someone who hates it and wants to go home. Uh, it's a great place to live, right?
Ah. Well, yeah. Some people, in many ways, right, like they long, so to speak, for the green grass that they see on the other end of the border. But at the same time, I don't know, like when we think about happiness, well, maybe that might like delve into the philosophical for a while right here. But the thinkers of old have thought about how maybe happiness is something that it can be sought from the external world, but certainly there's a profound tradition that asserts that maybe happiness comes from a self-knowledge and a mastery maybe over circumstances, whatever they may be. So I don't know, like it's
Yep, yep. And
Mhm.
it's a mindset of, I'm happy with what I've got. I mean, I've always been one that's thought you shouldn't always be pushing Amy more. I mean, stop and pause sometimes and just think, wow, how lucky I am with the things that
Mm,
I've got. So, enough money to go on holiday when we need to, enough money for my children to do
mm,
the course that they want to at the university that they want to, nice house, not worrying about paying the mortgage, so be happy
mm,
with that and don't constantly have this hunger for something extra. I don't know.
mm.
That's contentment is underrated, I think, in a lot of people.
You are absolutely right. Thank you so much, Emma. As we now kind of think about the transitions then that took place in Malaysia, would you share with me how you went from initially being a bit of an insurance whiz right there, over to becoming an education whiz, educating the bright stars of KTJ at this point in time?
Well, there was a stop off at the British Council in the meantime. So I worked. So my boss, who was brilliant in my loss adjusting firm, was made redundant, and I just got fed up because he was gone, and he was a brilliant guy to work for. And I decided to learn to be a teacher. So
Mm-hmm.
I did a course at the British Council, then liked it, so I became a teacher at the British Council. So I used to teach
Ah.
English. And it was quite useful because it's a wonderful place to learn how to teach English.
Mm.
They're very, very good at that. I mean, they run the courses, so there was lots of
Ah.
to do. And then I
Huh.
got into teaching IELTS as well.
Ah, okay.
And then I became an IELTS examiner as well. And of course,
Mm.
that was quite useful then when I came to KTJ because of all
Ah.
of our students have to do IELTS.
Wow. Okay. Huh.
So yeah, so there was 7 years at British Council, and then I was looking to move from the British Council. There's that 7 year thing, right, where people get fed up with their jobs after about 7 years. So I was
Huh.
looking to move, and KTGA was opening up a primary school, and they needed someone on the sort of admin
Mm.
office side. And the principal knew that I was quite organized because I'd been running some of the Oxbridge KTJ events for a few years with him. So I
Mm.
came and joined KTJ initially as head of operations over in the primary school and opened up their
Mm.
primary school. But I
Wow.
did come here as a teacher initially.
I see. Wow. Okay. And you mentioned Oxbridge events. Was that around the point when I guess you had joined the Oxford Cambridge Society? Was it kind of like when you came over to Malaysia, then it was something that you immediately, well, became a part of, or?
No, it wasn't really. It was I got involved in the Oxbridge Society because they started doing a boat race, annual Oxford Cambridge boat race,
Okay.
and I went along to that because I used to row at Oxford. I rowed at school and I rowed at Oxford as well. So I came
Wow.
along, but we were rowing in the lake gardens in little gondolas, so it wasn't quite the Oxford Cambridge rowing. Um, but it was a bit more Hawaii 5 than Oxbridge boat race. But it
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
was a great way to meet the Oxbridge people, and those guys are still my best friends now, and that's almost 20 years later. So yeah, so I joined the committee of the Oxford Cambridge Society, and then KTJ was looking to start a different event, some kind
Mm.
of event for their top end students, and we just kind of collaborated together. And we've got more now. We've got the debating forum, we've added the engineering workshop, we've added a moot,
Mm.
which is the law one.
Mm.
Yeah, great. There's a lot of opportunities to collaborate
Mm.
between the two organizations.
Wow, that's wonderful. Then, as we kind of then think about KTJ, then, so then, what do you feel, I guess, were some of the most rewarding parts, I guess, of like, well, this time? Well, of course, I say was, so maybe like that's a misspeak because you're still at KTJ, so even after such a long time, so long productive
Yeah.
engagement spanning over many years. But if I would ask you to recount some things that you consider most rewarding, if you can immediately think of like some here and there, like what would you say some of those things are?
Yeah, I love the Oxbridge events that we do.
Mm,
You know, it to just sometimes stop and take stock and just look at an event and just think, oh wow, just the amount of learning and energy that's in a room. So particularly the engineering workshop, because basically there's 100 kids come from different schools. We mix them all up, and then they go off into groups, and they've got a box full of different things,
Mm,
sticks, paper, bolts, circuit boards, wires, batteries, and then they have to build something. Uh,
mm.
I'm tempted to run out my office now and grab a crane that's on a shelf outside my office to show you. So
You
what they do is
can.
they have to build something, they have these specs, they have these rules, they've got all day to build it, and then we test it. And just fantastic that they are doing this hands-on engineering and problem solving. So the one we did last time was an engineering one with 10 groups of building a crane. We even gave them syringes because we wanted them to explore this hydraulic concept. Half of
Ah.
them did. And
Mm,
it's just brilliant watching them all come up with different designs and models and how they solve their problems, and programming as well. They've got to do some wiring, some programming on it. The debating forum is novice debaters. There's usually about
mm,
150. They work with Oxbridge members on coaching them on how to debate, and then we do mini debates. And that's really wonderful to see when you get a novice first time debater who's so nervous
mm.
before they speak, and then they do it, they do their 90 seconds, they speak, and then afterwards you meet them and they're just buzzing. They're like, oh my god, I love that, I want to do that again, I want to do it again. But we've created this event that's really, really nurturing for first-time debaters. It's a really
Mm,
safe place to just try debating, because some of the
mm.
competitions in KL are pretty ruthless, right? If you've never debated before.
I can
Um,
imagine, yes.
yeah, and we've got a moot, so we've got the only schools moot in
Mm,
Malaysia, which is pretty good. So they get a Law Asia university level stack of papers. They got 6 weeks to analyze them. They work with a mentor, and then they come and they do trials. And
mm,
so it's pretty amazing. And they have two tough judges who will question them as well. And if you're interested in doing law, the moot's amazing, and the standard is incredible. Sometimes these kids, and you just think, oh
mm,
my God, I can't believe you're only sort of 16, 17, and they just handle it so well. But yes,
mm,
those are great. And as I say, when you get students who, like yesterday, a student getting into pen and just being so excited about it. My favorite one was the reason I came back into teaching from admin was because there was a boy who was a Petronas scholar who'd got an offer from Cambridge, and he kept failing his IELTS exam. And
mm,
it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, if you don't have the English language requirement that they need, you will just not get in. You will lose your offer. So he kept taking the exam and not doing well. So the head of the sixth form at the time said, "Look, I know you're over, in admin in the primary, but I know you used to be an examiner. Can you work with this boy?" So we did, and we worked and we worked and we worked, and we just did so much work. It was every other day we would do a session. And then when he got his IELTS and he ended up retaking and getting way more than he needed, he worked so hard on it. Um, it was just one of the best moments. I felt like I was walking on air when he told me, because, as a Petronas scholar going to Cambridge,
mm,
transformational experience for him, an opportunity for him. And then I was so happy. I just thought, where do you get such highs in admin? You don't. As a teacher, you do.
mhm,
You can have these wonderful, wonderful moments.
mhm,
In admin, they're not there quite so much. So
mm,
I thought, okay, I'll go back into teaching.
mm.
It's a bit more soul fulfilling, I think.
It's
My
wonderful.
admin is very important, and I still do a lot, but it's
I
the
see.
engagement with students that's nice.
Yeah. A teacher at heart in many ways.
Mm.
If I could then ask you then, when I asked you earlier about what you considered some like memorable moments right there. So then I guess you mentioned, well, the activities of the Oxford Cambridge Society, and you also mentioned along the way the story of the Petronas scholar who had gotten into Cambridge. And I guess, of course, we know that education is, well, a, shall we say, creation of every individual that branches out into numerous possible pathways. But what do you feel is so transformative about an education at maybe Oxford or Cambridge that makes it maybe something that is desirable to pursue and life changing when obtained?
Okay, I think it's to some extent overstated,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for example, we've got our speech day coming up, and we often invite alumni back for these things. And so far, I haven't come across an Oxbridge, LSE, or Imperial one. They went to other universities,
Mm-hmm.
and yet obviously they go on and they do absolutely incredible things.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be overstated. The advantage of it is that I think it opens doors, you know, a bit like me getting job interviews in insurance because it's a novelty. I wonder if I hadn't gone to Oxford and been president of the Oxford Society, really you would be interviewing me. So it creates opportunities. Would you have been interviewing me if I hadn't gone to Oxford?
Well, there is a good chance I would not have found you. I had known about KTJ before. I am interviewing different school leaders. There is the chance that I would have eventually come on to you, but then the way that I found you was because essentially I saw that you were president of the Oxford Cambridge Society. So that is the thing right there. But I do
Okay.
think that there would have been a point eventually during which our fates would have collided. So yeah, I think that it would have happened anyway.
Okay, there we go. Good answer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I think it opens doors. The other thing that is lovely about it, and which really you were saying about the transition from England to Malaysia, was that the Oxford and Cambridge Society in Malaysia is absolutely wonderful, and it's just such a great group of friends. And in the pandemic, in particular, we were all very, very close and very, very supportive of
Mm,
each other. So
mm,
I've made lifelong friends. My best friends
mm,
are often from the Oxford and Cambridge Society. So when you go to a new country,
mm,
just look up the Oxford and Cambridge Alumni Society
mm,
there. There's lots of them. You know, it's like if you're a Chevening scholar, it's the same
mm.
thing. You
I
know, there's
see.
lots of them around. And it's just a bunch of like-minded, similar people that you
Mm.
can instantly bond with when you go somewhere new.
Wow, and that's wonderful. What was it like while eventually taking up that role as president? And I would also observe from, well, the time of COVID, you guys were extraordinarily productive. There were so many different events right there. You had conversations with Anwar, you had conversations with, well, Khairy and Ambiga, and so many other things along the way right there. I mean, yeah, like it's
Yeah,
astonishing. And what was it like to be a part of the club during that
yeah.
time and
Oh,
to continue even now?
well, I've been on the Exco for a while, and of course, there's some really, really impressive past presidents. You know, people like Elizabeth Lee from Sunway and
Mm-hmm.
YY Job Street. So there are some really impressive people that you're kind of following. But it is an incredible committee where everybody chips in and helps, and is very, very supportive. And everybody brings their own little bit of expertise. And sometimes people are busier, and sometimes people have got a bit more time. I was lucky with the people who were the vice presidents and the secretary and the treasurer at the time. So a little bit daunting, but you've got amazing people around you. And
Mm,
it's not the kind of committee that you can sort of rule from the top, given the nature of the people on it. So it
mm,
constantly collaborates,
mm,
evolves and collaborates and ebbs and flows and things like that. In a way, it's unfortunate because at the start of the pandemic,
mm,
but it allowed us to move online. And then,
mm,
as you say, we interviewed all these pretty impressive people. I mean, the first one we did was Prof. Jomo. We didn't want to do Prof. Jomo first because he's a big guy, and we didn't know how this thing was going to work. We weren't even 100% sure the tech was going to work. Sean, who I know you know very well, was helping us with all the
mm-hmm,
tech side, and we were really nervous about the whole thing. Uh, but Prof. Jomo was desperate to talk about the pandemic, and he wanted us to move forward his interview, so we launched with
mm,
it's really, really hard because the day we did it, the day before, my mother had just passed away from COVID. So
Oh,
it was
I'm
just,
sorry to hear that.
yeah, that was, talk about just trying to put yourself out there. And I remember closing the door, and my family were all outside and closing the door, and then switching on this webinar, and we had no idea whether 1,000 people were going to tune in or three. And it
Hmm.
was, we had no idea if the tech was going to work. It was a really daunting experience,
Hmm.
but it worked. And then it grew. I mean, those, as you say, I think, I mean, the Khairy one was the one that tipped it, talking about the vaccines.
Mm.
Was the big one that men jumped it. But if you look on our YouTube channel, the Oxford Cambridge Society Malaysia's YouTube channel, quick plug, there's a huge range. I mean, we had,
Mm.
people talking about books, we had health ones, we had a yoga one,
Mm.
lots and lots of different webinars. It grew into a beast that
Mm.
I was glad when we finished them in a way. We ended
Wow.
up being invaded with trolls a lot.
Trolls.
We I used the right word.
Like
I used the right word.
keyboard warriors, any other synonyms,
Annoying
internet
people.
instigators.
So every time we would plan an event, we would have troll bouncers, and their job was literally to watch the comments coming up in the chat, because we want people to put questions in, right?
Yes.
But people would just, and then they would put a horrible comment and then just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. And then so there would be this chat going on at the side on WhatsApp. Have you seen that person there? Yeah, he's repeated again. Okay, kick him out. Kick. It was like, it was just growing. And then people would be arguing. And Mark Disney, who's deputy head of the Sixth Form KTJ and as past president of the Oxford Society, he was great at kind of going in and debating with them on the in the
Debating with that.
arguing back with them. But it just attracted too many people and just grew. And it was like, no. Uh, so
Wow.
now we've gone back to in person,
Mm.
closed door, Chatham House rule.
Ah,
Uh,
right.
60 people, great speaker, members. We invite students, so KTJ students often go. We've had GIS students in the past come. Students are always welcome. Street KDU, one of our members, Sunda, she brings her students to,
Mhm.
you know, that we can control, thousands and thousands watching on YouTube and Facebook. That was a bit of a beast.
I
It's,
can imagine. Yes, that's interesting. You've definitely had some interesting guests, and I look forward to seeing some of them actually join you on this channel as well.
great. Yeah,
All right.
yep, yeah, there's some lovely ones. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, okay, wow. Thank you so much for that sharing. It seems like there's something really magical, really, about this community that you've built right there, and that's truly amazing. And the magical other thing about it is that these communities, the Oxford Cambridge Malaysia Society, and also KTJ at large, these are communities united around education at large. And so I'd like to ask you, Emma, if you could tell me, how do you feel about education at large? What is its highest manifestation? What is a good education? And yeah, so like, do you have a philosophy of education? I read actually your article, the interview with Tatler a while ago, and you had said during the course of this article right there that essentially a good education features, so to speak, well,
Mm.
holisticism, amongst other things, challenging conversations, academic investigation. Yeah, so like, well, in your view, well, what is a good education?
Um, so we mentioned earlier, we were talking about having your goal, reaching your goal, raising your aspirations.
Hmm.
I mean, wherever you're being educated, you have to improve yourself. So there has to be an upward trajectory. You have to
Hmm.
set yourself a good goal, and hopefully get there. In some cases, exceed getting there. But certainly in KTJ, we are really, really adamant that it's all about the whole child development. We are not an exam factory,
Hmm.
not just about the grades. So if you come here, you will be doing inter-house activities. You will be competing. I mean, everybody has to do the cross-country run, for example, in-town cross-country run,
Wow.
which you either love it or hate it. And the number of leadership opportunities, outreach projects, mentoring of juniors in different ways and with different structures, student-led societies, a lot of super curriculum things, because that's obviously aimed at the Oxbridge. So busy, really, really busy, and
Mm.
deliberately so. And we're really focusing on those transferable skills that you need
Mm.
in university. There are some schools that are just set up to get your exam results. That is definitely not us. So one of the things we do is, I was just mentioning earlier, speech day. So we have an alumni careers day, we have alumni come back for speech day, we have alumni pages and events. We're really, really interested in what our students do after they've left us. So for us, the
Mm-hmm.
journey and our role in it and interest in it and our investment in it is not just when they get their exam results and they go to X university. We want to
Mm.
see what kind of students and people we've made and
Mm.
helped to nurture.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing outside afterwards? And we hope that we talk a lot about community. And no matter what community you're in, you don't necessarily have to be, you know, an MP or a CEO, but are you adding value to where you are? Have you got that culture from us about thinking about your community and contributing, and not just you and your exams and studying and your own particular
Mm.
goal? And I think it's, for us, that's what education is. It's way more than just the exams. It's the kind of person you are and the mentality and in a way, the kind of the moral code that you have as well, the way that you
Mm-hmm.
behave with others, the way that you treat others, uh,
Mm.
is really, really important. I hope our students leave us with a certain kind of mindset and culture and energy, contribute
Mm.
to their communities. And that's really the goal. Sorry, that's a very long answer.
No, that's wonderful. Um, okay. Can I ask a bit of a niche question then? Great. So a bit of a niche question. So in your Tatler article, so then you responded to the question, what is holistic education and why is it important to you? You responded at that time, for us, it means challenging conversations and academic investigation. So then, what is an example of a challenging conversation that you might think of as maybe formative, perhaps, or important to have with a student to develop them, either instrumentally or ultimately, into maybe a person who is capable of contributing to the world around them through their education?
Okay. Well, it's funny because as you know, I was a couple of minutes late here because I was
Yes.
having
Mm.
a meeting with one of our deputy heads of the sixth form. She looks after our economists, and we were talking about them setting up a website, a top economist student setting up a website where they can put in sample answers and do little YouTube videos to help their juniors to do the A-level papers, the AS and the A2 papers. So just kind of pushing students sort of academically with projects like that
Mm.
is one example. We have a lot of enrichment events where we will invite speakers that come
Mm.
in. University lecturers will come in and give a lecture, and then the students ask questions. One of the things we've also done is we've built a dining room in our sixth form centre. So the idea is that it seats about 24. It's one beautiful, long, big table. And
Mm.
what they do is speakers will come in and they might give a talk. For example, we had one on actuarial science. We've had one on working for an NGO in New York. And then not him because he was online, but a speaker comes in and they give a talk. Then afterwards they'll have dinner, and then the students can practice having an adult serious conversation at a dinner table
Mm.
with with the guest speaker. And then some of the universities also stay for dinner as well, which is quite nice. It's lots and lots of different things. And we don't want just the economists to come to the economics talk or the actuarial science or something. We want lots of other people to be coming to come and listen to these speakers and engage with them and just broaden their horizons. Um,
Mm,
we've got a lot of student-led societies, so things like the finance, the Econ Finance Club, the Law Society, which
mm.
are really useful as well.
Well, I guess if you were to think then about how you might advise maybe students. Of course, there may be people from different backgrounds right here. I remember reading somewhere that it was the case that at KTJ, so like you do not necessarily value numbers, and that maybe your institutional priorities might be a bit different from that in catering maybe to a smaller group right there. But as we kind of extend an outlook maybe to the broader swath of people out there, so then there may be some people from different backgrounds. Who knows? There could be a random person in a village right there, like using the internet and watching this particular video. We have no idea. But if you were to, well, give some advice to help catalyze that persona or like any individual's education with the aim maybe of helping them to become, well, a valuable participant in our
Mhm.
society, then what sort of advice might you give?
I think it's easier now with the internet for people to find online events, but also attend them in person. LSE's got this big event coming up. If you join Sunway University has a lot of guest speakers that come. Get on
Mm,
their mailing list, attend some of their guest lectures. Um, you know, the Oxbridge YouTube channel we were just talking about. It's got loads and loads of different
mm,
interviews of interesting people. And then if you find somebody interesting, follow up with them, email them. Prof. Jomo has got
mm.
a brilliant mailing list that he's got with articles that he sends out to people.
He
So
does? Oh, okay.
yeah, get on Prof. Jomo's mailing list. So
Okay, you said that to me.
yeah, Prof. Jomo, he comes up. So
Wow.
yeah, I will send it to you.
Okay,
So
thank you.
basically, it's a little bit like a thread. So just read things, listen to podcasts. A podcast amazing. There are so many podcasts from universities now. Imperial in particular is
Mm,
brilliant with its podcasts. And so, you start, it's just like pulling at something.
mm-hmm,
You could be even just reading the BBC and something's interesting. What's the name of the academic? Google the academic. What else are they doing? They might have a podcast. They may have a book. They may have done an interview with somebody else on YouTube, for example. And then even without spending any money and leaving your house, there's so much you can explore now on the internet.
mm,
And the other thing now is, there's so much even with books now. You can get sort of online books for free.
mm,
There are some brilliant summer courses as well, but they tend to be really, really expensive. So, if you're in a campus, it's quite difficult to get out to those things. Uh,
mm,
But I think be curious,
mm-hmm,
and it's never just, you must never just read one article and that's it. If you found that interesting, take the topic, take the academic's name and dig a little deeper. Where is that thread then going to lead you to?
mm-hmm. Wow. Uh-huh. Like the little red thread fate, or maybe it is like the thread that Ariadne laid in the labyrinth that eventually allowed Theseus to escape. By all means, it may be the pathway towards salvation of some sort. Or maybe not if well, salvation, then maybe some sort of excellence which had thus been left unfound.
So one of the things that some of our more confident students do is they will find an interesting person and then they will email them and say, "Can I join you for work experience? Or are there any
Mm,
opportunities for you?" And they're just pushy and they just ask.
mm,
Um, so
mm-hmm,
it's back down to me not expecting to visit Oxford and Cambridge
mm.
when I joined this new school.
I
It's just
see. Okay.
put yourself out there. Send them an email
Uh,
saying, "Can I come and have a chat with you? Can I meet you about this? Or, I found that really interesting. Have you got time for a coffee? Do you take job shadowing students in the summer?"
mm,
Just ask, go for it. I mean, the worst that can happen is they ignore you or they say no, but a certain percentage of times they will
Mm.
come back and say yes. And people love it when they get a bright young person who reaches out to them and asks
If
for help.
if you think about it, I mean, like this is, I mean, like what you just said is exactly how this conversation happens. So thank you again. Quote the words of a friend right there.
To sum it up in like me terms, the Lulu is the Salulu. I made my uni counselor stick it up on her wall. And
The Lulu is the Solulu. You never would know what you can get if you were to go ahead and try for it. Well, thank you so much, Emma. Well, as we move towards the end of this interview, I guess, can I ask what you think are, I guess, like some future projects, goals, ideas, or, well, things in general that you, well, either look forward to materializing or are currently passionate about in the realm of, well, education at large?
Yeah, I think you know, the Oxford Society's got these three events we talked about, the debating forum, the engineering workshop, and the moot. I would love to add more if we could come up. So, you know, we've batted around the idea of a big maths fest. Interesting coming from me who's hopeless at maths. But I know people love maths. So the idea of having a maths fest and just everybody coming and spending the day doing maths in different ways in a non-competitive Olympiad style way.
Uh,
Do you know what I mean? Just for the joy of it, not because it's, yeah, people love it. We've got some students here so good at maths. They're so quiet. And then they do their maths and they come alive. It's just brilliant. Yeah, they love their maths. So something like that. And you know, we've got these events to do with Sunway, the essay competition, and the public speaking competition. We need more of those. There are great opportunities to collaborate with organizations like Closing the Gap. I would love to do more of those. They went very quiet in the pandemic. Now they're sort of getting themselves going now. Apparently, they're now with Tunku Rahman Foundation. So they reached out a couple of weeks ago. Would love to do more with them. Just reaching more Malaysians, not
mhm,
just the ones in KTJ. And KTJ students get a lot from interacting with students from outsiders. So one big project we've just started now is there are 5 schools we've come together and we're calling it a bubble day. We're bubbling all of our Oxbridge candidates for different subjects. So all the
mhm,
computer science bubble together, all the mathematicians bubble together. So the idea is they work together, encourage, share resources, more of those kind of things, I think,
mm,
because it's getting very, very, very difficult. It was never easy, but it's getting harder and harder to get into these top universities. And
mm,
just trying to get people over the line,
mm,
as well as getting people like me to think, okay, maybe I should give it a go. I hadn't thought about applying, but yeah, maybe I should apply.
wonderful. Cool, cool,
Many
cool.
things to do. Hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I guess then my last question would then be, do you have any personal, well, and immediate hopes for the future? And they could be personal, they could be for, well, students at your school or for anybody else as well.
Well, number one, I'm a mum, so my goals are always uh related to my 3 children. So as long as they're happy and doing well,
Mm.
then I think that's enough for me. I actually want to be a grandma, but they're really they're like, no, they're too young, they're too young. But if you ask me what my ultimate goal is now at my next stage of my life is to be a grandma. There we go. That's it.
Wow.
My kids are gonna be killing me now.
um, Davidson siblings, you have your call right there.
Yeah. I
Well,
think there's so much that we can all be doing, but I think it's the personal contentment that is
mhm,
important.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, thank you so much, Emma, for the privilege of this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Davidson, Miss Davidson, it was a wonder to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.